The 2024 salary cap is much higher than expected. Plus, who should get the franchise tag now that those numbers are in? We got a lot to cover today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every single day. We appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joe, what'd you do this weekend? Anyone?
Felt like I was somewhere different with you. Having a good time. Our kids having a good time. Drawing on your windowsills and stairways.
Getting the girls together was fun. That's the first time. They're about a year apart, but now both old enough where they can talk and run around and interact with each other. And that was really neat to see them kind of have their own chemistry with one another as they played all around our house.
Played and did what friends do when they get together, get in a little trouble.
A little bit of trouble. Just a little bit.
Our Draft Dads episode's coming in June, so
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll get to that then.
But I remember distinctly being with you and you sitting at the table and turning around saying 255.4. And I said, what? You said the cap, Kyle. It's 255.4 for the upcoming season, which is a huge win for all of us. Because that is significantly higher than the projected 242, 243 that we dealt with through much of the buildup to this moment in time.
Yeah, it helps every team, right? So that's the thing. All 32 have achieved like $13 additional million in cap space
by doing
nothing. But you can't help but especially feel some relief if you're maybe a Bills fan or a Dolphins fan or a Saints fan, us in that north of $50 million over the cap club. Not anymore. As that provided some nice relief. And then, of course, the Dolphins and Saints have already started making some moves to get themselves in cap compliance. The Bills got a lot of work to do, but $13 million less for everybody to have to deal with, or $13 million more for the teams on the good side of that cap compliancy.
Yeah, it is a grand total of $30 million higher than last year. So we keep referencing this 12-13. That's versus the forecast. And you knew there was the new TV deals, right? You're starting to get the COVID year out, which was obviously a reduction in a lot of revenue sharing. That's starting to get phased out as far as the cap. And there's a whole science in how they calculate the cap. But you kind of heard they wanted to space out some of the infusion of TV dollars. Yep. So there's not like this overly dramatic spike, which then I can't help but wonder, like, what is this going to look like if this is indeed what they did? If they did try to remain calculated with the cap, what is this going to look like in 3 years? If this is the growth, right? Because $30 million in cap, that's close to what the first ever NFL salary cap grand total was back in the 90s.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy to think about it like that.
And went up like that in 1 year. And obviously the dollar's valued differently and all that, the inflation and all that. But it's just really crazy to think about the growth to get to 255.4.
I remember some of the thought processing commentary regarding the new TV deal that came through was, well, wait until 2025, right? Like that's when it's really going to kick in. Well, what was this? Like if this was supposed to be the step and next year was the leap, what does next year look like?
And I can tell you, over the cap, their forecast for 2025 is still just 260.
Yeah, I got a feeling that's
whatever salary cap figures you have for next year.
Yeah,
just know you're probably going to get it stacked another probably $20 million on top of that.
So tell all your friends and family members to watch all the football that they can so that there's more salary cap space
That's
available for all of our favorite teams to add players. And then hopefully more NFL players can find themselves in very public relationships with high profile significant others to, even bring in more people, right? It's this Taylor Swift is responsible for this, right, Kyle? And that's what this comes down to.
Obviously. But what is cool is we know that the league has really been trying to get a better foothold in capturing fans from all different kinds of backgrounds, and that includes gender. And Taylor Swift, the league they're like, why didn't we think of marketing with Taylor Swift before? All we needed was somebody to fall in love with Taylor Swift and her to fall in love with him. But that I've seen that joke a bunch of times this weekend, that you can thank Taylor Swift for your team's infusion of cap space. But
the international efforts have been pretty intentional as well. I mean, you're seeing the globalization of the NFL take off in ways that we never have, right? Germany was part of this year. I think there's more countries in future years. I know that those are challenging moments for your teams to have to deal with those logistics, but it's big for the globalization of the game and revenue spikes like this that lead to more money for players, which means more money for our teams to hand out to the players. And as the players become more expensive and all these different trends, it's generally a good thing. Now, I'm interested to see if there's a spike to the contracts handed out. Like, is this a negotiating ploy now for agents and players to be like, well, we know what just happened. Your budget's got a little more healthy, and we'd like a little bit more of that. So I wonder if some of these escalating contracts factor into that. And obviously the franchise tag, which is going to be a big part of segment 2 and segment 3 today. I wonder if those top names getting tagged kind of hurts that inevitable push of the top of the market. So always some layers to everything here.
I think the subgroup of players who will probably be the least impacted by this, or may not be as impacted by this as maybe we think, is probably the middle class group of talent, right? Because if you're a lower class, you're a fringe minimum salary type player, you're going to be that anyway, right?
Yep.
The top of market guys, absolutely. This is the greatest thing for their negotiation efforts that they could have possibly dreamed up, as teams magically now have this much more of a budget than they thought they would. And well, if you're signing me to, if you were offering me this percentage of the cap when it was $13 million lower with the forecast, I expect that same percentage of the new cap to be a part of my offer from you. And then the middle class, the 1-year vet guys that signed for a few $1 million, are they going to sign for a few more $1 million? Probably not, right? So I think the domino effect stops with the middle class players.
Yeah. Well, we are going to examine the franchise tag opportunities that exist, because now we also have those figures. And, look, one other note here, in kind of reading some of the commentary from the insiders that have asked around about the cap, you could tell that this was a bit of a surprise. Like, there wasn't a world where these people behind the scenes were anticipating it being to 55.4, right? This is a bit of a surprise, which sets the tone for an interesting combine week, which kicks off this week in Indianapolis. So a lot to discuss this week on the podcast. But coming up next, we're going to talk franchise tags, who should get the tag, who should not. Be sure to stick with us. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. They've also got the football's futures bets in there, hockey, whatever sports you're into. Check it out. FanDuel has some action that you can check out, and this deal is incredible. Again, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so quarterbacks is first.
Yeah.
You have the figures all up and ready to go?
Quarterbacks, you tag a quarterback, that's going to cost you a firm $38.3 million against your cap.
All right, so the thing that we've done, at least on the offensive side of the ball, is we've already gone positionally and had a show and talked about the free agent market that's upcoming. And we know the top options are Pro Bowl quarterback Gardner Minshew, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Baker Mayfield. Kirk Cousins, 36-year-old quarterback coming off his Achilles tear.
That's a big
no. And Kirk, you said it was 38?
38, yep.
I have to double check the dollars on him. He might even be more than 38. But I don't think there's a quarterback out there that on a 1 year fully guaranteed, especially it wouldn't make sense for Minnesota anyway.
Right. It's all your cap space. All of it.
And how's Tampa looking in cap space?
43.6.
So they could fit it, but then they'd have to zhuzh around a bunch of other contracts to have, and they're trying to figure something out with Mike Evans, it sounds like.
Yeah, not to mention Antoine Winfield, Levante David. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not gonna happen.
Hard pass on the quarterbacks with franchise tag.
Hard pass.
Now, I know we have a fundamental belief with the running back position, but that is next, and that's one of the cheaper tags that is out there. What's that cap check in at?
$11.95 million.
Okay, so $12 million. We had a bunch of franchise tag running backs last year with Tony Pollard and Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs. Am I forgetting anybody?
No, that was it.
That is, I guess, what is ironic about the running back position and their tag is if guys are signing like their new deals, that's about the dollar amount that it checks in at. Like, I don't think you're paying anything more than what you would pay for a running back otherwise to sign like a market deal, because that's not a position that is getting a lot of push to continue to up and reset what the top of market looks like.
I agree. The challenge, though, is that if you sign them to an extension, like an actual contract that's multiple years, you can structure that in such a way that you're not committing a firm $12 million against the cap, which you would this year, right? So I think that's what makes it challenging for really every position, is the fact that it's firm, right? There's no ability to spread money around. And so, yes, I would agree that AAV of $12 million is not excessive for Barkley, Pollard, Jacobs, Henry, these types of players. That's probably where they're going to land. The challenge is, do you really want to commit that firm $12 million? I think that's where it gets dicey for me. And so it's all a no for me on these players.
Likewise. Which takes us to wide receiver, which we know we have a tagged player.
There's value at wide receiver because this is $21.8 million. And I feel like a lot of these top of market players will get an AAV more than that. And so I think there's some logic here when we bring up some of these wide receivers. Of course, T. Higgins already getting the tag, which to me makes sense because I think that the Bengals are potentially saving themselves $4 or $5 million in AAV and putting themselves in this spot where our concern with the long-term extension for T. Higgins was the fact that you're staring at a $100+ million passing offense between Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. Right. I think this gets you another season of Higgins and avoiding that dynamic, and then you figure it out down the line.
Well, and the other thing for Cincinnati specifically that I like is they'll have an opportunity. They have plenty of space, right? They're not limited in cap space. I don't expect them to go out and drop a ton of money across free agency, but they're in the top 10. They're over $50 million in functional cap right now, and they've got 49 players under contract. So it's not like they got to sign another 10 guys to get to the 51 minimum. You can work through the offseason, address the rest of your needs. And what happens if they come on the board and stud wide receivers there? You draft that guy.
And since he will.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they've done that the last several years. They've drafted a year ahead of their needs.
100%.
And then you can open up the door. And I know tag and trade is a complicated beast. But if you get into the draft and you say, hey, we're going to pick best player available, and it happens to be a wide receiver.
Yeah.
some other team's going to be attracted to get T. Higgins because you don't have to bid on him on the open market. And you're getting him in year one for a guarantee that's below what you'd be getting if you signed him in free agency this year. Because a signing bonus, right? If you use T. Higgins' franchise tag total as kind of the bones of your signing bonus, it's $21 million.
Mm-hmm.
So say you traded for T. Higgins, we're going to give you a $5 million pay raise in year one. You're going to give you a $25 million signing bonus and a minimum salary, right? So it's about $26.5 million he gets at year one in cash.
Mm-hmm.
If he's on the open market, don't you think the signing bonus you're going to have to give and the check you're going to have to pay out front is probably $45 million? Like,
no doubt.
You're going to have to throw a lot more year one cash at him, too.
I think for a team like Cincy, yes, they're in a good cap position. They're sitting at about $51 million. They have the opportunity right now to be smart about this. They're paying a quarterback all the money. They're going to pay Chase all the money. And I'm not saying this because they're Cincinnati, but being calculated and maintaining as much flexibility for as long as possible is important for them.
Yep.
And I think that has to influence all of their decisions. But Michael Pittman's another name here. We have Higgins already got the tag. It's already done. Higgins is the other one here. And not Higgins, excuse me. Pittman's the other one here. $72 million the Colts have. Now, I think they should prioritize getting the long-term extension done. But if for some reason you're not getting there, this is an easy tag yes for me.
The tag with the intent of using that to catapult into your contract extended talks.
I get nervous when we talk Mike Evans. He's awesome, dude. He's an awesome player, and I think he's got a couple of more awesome seasons. But like, I worry about players like him and then the late stage versions of them. Like, you just see it happen quick.
And you don't know when it's going to come.
Dude,
so
yeah.
You want it to be this year when you're on the tag.
Yeah, but I don't think Mike Evans is looking at himself and saying that production dips coming in 2 or 3 years.
For sure.
But
for sure,
we all saw late stage Des Bryant, right? It happens. It happens to these types of receivers. I don't know that skill set's going to age gracefully. I'd be cautious there. And so maybe that's an argument for the tag because you get another year of Mike at $21 million, which I think is probably a reasonable AAV for him.
But they got to figure out what they're paying Baker too.
They do, and Antoine Winfield and Levante David. They got stuff to figure out. So, but you're going to have to ask yourself: are you going to sell out for that nucleus, right? Like, are you selling out for this nucleus of Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Levante David? And David's been very team friendly with his deals, probably too team friendly. Let's be honest. But I think the worst thing you can do is commit to a path that probably leads to mediocrity.
I would agree.
You got to be careful there for Tampa.
Tight end. Doesn't matter.
There's none here.
What's just for administrative purposes? Yeah. What's the tag?
12.3, which is a good number, right? But like Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, Noah Fant, Gerald Everett, none of them are getting that.
That's a pay cut for Hunter Henry.
Well, he's getting a pay cut regardless, but even though I think he's an attractive player,
right?
Yeah, I'm not messing with that.
Right. Offensive line.
And here's the problem with offensive line is we talked about this in the car the other day. Guards, centers, tackles, it's all the same thing. So it's at 21 million, 20.98. So basically
this idea.
It's nuts. Linebackers even worse.
Right.
So like there's some great interior offensive linemen as we've discussed. Like if you listen to our shows at the end of last week, we love the interior offensive line group. We do not like the tackle group. You're not doing the $21 million for any of these interior offensive linemen because that's we're talking about Robert Hunt is the best interior offensive lineman in the market.
That's a market reset.
Yeah. We're like 16, 17, 18 was the conversations we had. We're not going to go 21 on a hard 1-year deal there. So I don't think there's any offensive lineman that makes sense either.
No, there's just not good value with the intersection of since they lump them all into a singular category. Yeah. It unfortunately really hurts the interior. Well, it doesn't hurt the interior guys because they'd rather have the long-term contracts anyway. But it heck
of a way to put it. Yes.
Yeah.
But if there was a premier tackle or something,
you tag the tackle every time,
but it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So it's to me, there's no offensive lineman that makes sense. All right, folks, we're going to talk defensive side of the football, and we can we'll have our complaints about the linebackers and edge rushers being lumped together.
Get off our lawn.
Yeah, we'll do that for sure coming up here in just a second. So stick with us. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Have you ever considered what you would do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you exercise, read, spend some time with a loved one, maybe catch up on some sleep? A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters most to you so you can do more of it. Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. Therapy helps you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for people who have experienced major trauma. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. That'll get you matched with a licensed therapist, and then you could switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
So we'll start with the interior defensive lineman.
Yep. And that number is $22.1 million.
Except for Chris Jones.
Except for Chris Jones, who's going to get more than that.
Chris Jones, it would be around $32 million. He made more than the franchise tag total. So as a result, his franchise tag figure would be 120% of his previous year's salary.
I know we want to talk this positionally. I think you have to talk this from the Chiefs because you can only tag one player. And obviously you're not going to do Chris Jones. And you have L'Jarius Snead. We'll get to that. That feels like a yes if you can't get the long term there. I think for Chris Jones, franchise tag worthy player, the dynamics here don't make sense for that to happen.
And then the fact that you have another player who's coming off a rookie deal.
Snead,
as compared to, Chris had already had his second in class contract that he'd been working with.
Yeah. Let's talk Christian Wilkins here. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. It sounds like Miami's prepared to do it. And,
wait, say that again. You do or don't?
It sounds like Miami's prepared to do it.
Oh, okay.
Dan Graziano came on ESPN last week and said the Dolphins are not intending to let Christian Wilkins walk. And they have felt and seem to have been very far apart going back to last summer when they did negotiations. So I don't know that this is a fix beyond the first year. I'm sure the cap rising to the degree that it did has kind of reinvigorated the appetite to use the franchise tag on Christian Wilkins because Miami is, I think they're negative $29 million in cap space right now. They'll get an extra 18.5 when Xavier Howard's post-June 1st clears the books. They're going to cut him with a designated post-June 1st designation on March 13th. But you can't touch that money till June 2nd. So tagging Wilkins at that dollar amount, the blockade for Miami is you have a quarterback on a fifth-year option figure at $23 million. So now you're talking $44 million in cap space tied into Tua Tagovailoa's fifth-year option and Christian Wilkins on the franchise tag. I think if this happens, it means there's a domino with Tagovailoa and his contract that has to be the shoe on the other foot to justify, because they're going to restructure Tyreek Hill. They're going to restructure Jalen Ramsey. They're going to restructure Bradley Chubb. Would not be surprised if they restructured Teron Armstead, because that dollar amount could save you $8-9 million against the cap. And if he does end up riding off into the sunset after this year, and even if he doesn't, you could post June 1st him and you're still saving $11 million versus your liabilities in 2025. And I think another $8 million against your liabilities in 2026. I'm not saying I would do that. Mm-hmm. I'm saying they have all those levers to pull as this first wave of free agency happens. Say, oh, so-and-so wants a sign here. What can we do to create the space that we need? Boom, let's pull this lever. Boom, let's pull this lever. So they have it. They just would not have it if they did not have Wilkins on the tag and Tua's fifth-year option simultaneously.
I think in a vacuum, Christian Wilkins is absolutely a slam dunk franchise tag player where you feel like there's some challenges in terms of where the team is at and what they want to pay, where the player's at and where they want to pay. And Christian Wilkins is, from a team perspective, I think this matters. He's a little older than you think he's going to be, right? Mm-hmm. Can you remind, is he 29?
29. 20, 29 at the end of next season, I believe.
A little bit older for a guy coming off of
A
rookie contract. So I think he's a slam dunk. I think some of the dynamics in Miami may make that, like you'd love to not just have a firm $22 million for Christian Wilkins, but that's the only thing that makes it difficult. And Wilkins is the type of talent you don't want to just let go, right? So I get the challenging layers to that, but we'll see.
How about Madubuike?
That's another player to me that feels like a yes. The problem is the Ravens, right? They're at $16 million in cap space and a lot of expiring contracts. So
do they have the most daunting expiring contract list?
I think so.
In the league.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's part of what made the loss this year to Kansas City sting as much as it did when it was at home. And you knew what was coming on the other side of it. Was the amount of talent that was going to be up for renewal. And then their own in-house players who grew like Madubuike this year, who had the big explosion and blowout for production.
Yeah, so I think, again, in a vacuum, yes. I just don't think you can commit that to him. I think Leonard Williams, 22 is too much for Leonard Williams, although I think Seattle should figure that out. They can't not bring him back.
Not after what they traded for.
No. So moving on to
linebacker,
which is $24 million, because you want to know why. The NFL thinks that people like Von Miller plays linebacker, and that's this. They think Von Miller and Fred Warner play the same position.
It's outrageous.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. It's insane. So, my notes, literally, if you looked at my notes, I have the word linebacker, and then I have one word next to it. LOL. No. It's LOL. Like just no.
Is that technically not 3 words though?
You know what, Kyle? When I was starting that, I was thinking that to myself, and then I was hoping that you wouldn't say anything, and then I would just get yelled at on YouTube for saying it, and then you did it. So
sorry.
Yeah. But do players like Josh Allen, Brian Burns, Danielle Hunter, do they fall into this, or does the NFL think
I think Josh Allen probably does get tagged? It sounds like. It doesn't sound like Brian Burns is going to.
Panthers $34 million in space. Jacksonville 24.6. Do you know who makes the most sense to me is Danielle Hunter? Danielle Hunter to me is the perfect franchise tag player. Vikings $35.8 million. Because here's why. He's like getting a little bit older, and the injury history scares me. Mm-hmm. And so I would want one more year of Danielle Hunter. I'm sure Danielle Hunter would want many more years of big money. Like, this is his big chance. And from a team perspective, I'd slap that thing on him and then say, we'll enjoy you for one more season, and then, figure it out from there, because I would be nervous about, he's a player that deserves 6 years, $120 million, but I would be scared to give him that. So I'd say, here's the 1 year franchise tag.
I don't know. It just, from a Minnesota as a team standpoint, for a 30-year-old passer, he was awesome last year, right?
Unbelievable, yeah.
But there's also this weird element of their defense and schematically how it works and their pressure ideology. Doesn't it kind of mitigate? Like we did that when we talked about if there's a corner and a pass rusher.
You're going to let Brian Flores dictate a decision like this because he wants to just run goofy defenses with fire hydrants and sending guys through gaps. You can't make decisions like that. Is
the inconvenient truth that tailoring your team and its composition to ideologically meshing with what you want to be on either side of the ball, is that not the entire purpose of team building?
The problem is that it's too extreme of an example.
But it's the example that we are talking about.
Right. So I can't not make decisions based on Brian Flores wanting to run the weirdest defensive scheme in the NFL. Can't do it, because you know what? You know who's probably not going to be there much longer? Brian Flores, because that's how coaching works in the NFL. It doesn't. Guys, how many? We have half the defensive coordinators turned over this year. Yeah. Half the offensive coordinators turned over this year. It's incumbent upon that coordinator to figure it out with the players.
And just as well as I do, that doesn't always happen.
I know. So we'll talk about just a bunch of inconvenient truths making this a hard conversation.
Right. And that's, I don't envy Minnesota's, because I feel like if that doesn't at least come up, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, it's good.
They're not having as thorough of a conversation as they should about the decision that they have to have. But he's worth the money. There's no question. But with Minnesota in the midst of a youth movement and a scheme that kind of mitigates talent on the line because it's all about, free runners and pressure. And
so are you saying let him walk? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying let him walk. I'm just saying it's a more complicated conversation than he had 16.5 sacks last year. Put him on the franchise tag.
So are you extending him? Here's your options. Franchise tag, 6 years, $120 million, or let him walk.
Can I tag and trade him? I want to tag and trade everybody.
That's always the best plan. Okay. It's always
and if you can't trade him and he plays for another year, okay. And they're a team that's not going to be so strapped for cap space that, like, if it plays out that way, like, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
I'm glad we had this conversation because now I know Danielle Hunter is going to be the thumbnail player. So
great. There you go. You're welcome. And sorry, Minnesota fans.
Corners.
I'm sure they will not be happy about the idea of that because Hunter's 87.5 career sacks. He's been an awesome player for them. He was awesome last year. Led the league in tackles for loss. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question.
No, there's no easy answer.
Corner.
The dollar amount here is $19.8 million. Your candidates are Jaylon Johnson and L'Jarius Snead.
They should both probably get it if they don't get contract extension.
Yeah. Bears got
the space. Kansas City got the space.
Yeah, they both have the space. These are like non-first round picks that have become excellent players.
Right.
I mean, like in the case of Snead, like one of the best players at his position.
And I'll tell you what, and I know somebody dogged me a little bit for undervaluing L'Jarius Snead.
I didn't forget that you didn't have him in your Pro Bowl. I didn't forget that.
Yeah. All right, so it's a hard group of corners. And I put Jalen Ramsey in over him. And you know what? You know who did make the Pro Bowl at least? Jalen Ramsey. So I'm
yeah, they both made it, right?
I feel a little justified for saying, well, our difference is Ramsey. I have done, you know how many players have scouted, like watched NFL players on film for free agency this year and like graded them and put them on a board? You know how many I'm at right now?
94.
I am at 127.
Healthy.
You know how high L'Jarius Snead ranks on this list?
1.
Oh, he's not 1. No. He is 1, 2, 3. He's the fifth. He's the 5th best expiring contract player that I have watched, regardless of position.
I'm interested in who the 5 players that are higher are.
Want to do it?
Sorry, Ross.
We have time still. We're all right.
Oh,
I'll give you a clue. One of them plays on the same defense as him.
Okay, Chris Jones, I guess.
Yes.
Well, you and I have both had the conversation that if Kansas City was held against the fire and said you can only pick one player to have, we both said it would be Snead.
Yes. And some of that has to do with age and contract value and Chris Jones pushing Aaron Donald for market. But I just think in a vacuum, I graded Chris Jones. Chris Jones was the best player I graded.
Okay. You have 4 more or 3 more?
3 more that are respectively better at their respective positions that are expiring contracts. One of them, we haven't talked about their position yet.
Winfield.
And Chris Jones graded as a 95 out of 100. Winfield graded as a 90.74, and L'Jarius Snead graded as a 90. So, he's right there with all the 3 of these guys.
I still got to find 2 more players.
Yeah. That are 90 and a half.
Danielle Hunter.
Danielle Hunter is an 89.63.
Brian Burns.
Brian Burns is an 86.3. Two low-value positions.
Okay. Punters, kickers? I don't even know who.
No, not that low value position.
Okay, so interior offensive line?
No.
Defensive tackle?
No.
Off-ball backer?
That's one. Who's the best off-ball linebacker?
In the free agent market?
Yeah. You just got done telling he signed these, undervalued himself and didn't get paid what he deserved.
I just said this? Oh, Levante David?
Yes.
Okay. And there's another player?
Yeah, another low-value position. You would never give him the tag. People have been trying to trade this dude to your team for 4 years.
Derrick Henry?
Yes.
Snead's my number one free agent.
That's fine. I have a methodology, and that's what it gave me.
Okay.
But I think if you looked at positional value and age, Snead is the most attractive free agent. So this is just, I'm grading you against the traits of what the scheme that I'm looking to find players for needs to run. But yeah, I'm not going to sign and prioritize 31-year-old Derrick Henry over L'Jarius Snead. From a dollars and age perspective, I'm not going to prioritize Chris Jones, even though I think he is a tier above everybody else that we just mentioned. And Levante David's in his 30s as a linebacker. I'm not going to prioritize that guy over L'Jarius Snead either. So I get why you say that, and I'm inclined to agree with you that the most attractive player, because the other free agents that are upper stratosphere players that are set to hit the market for my rankings are Danielle Hunter, who we just talked about, Tyron Smith, who's a 35-year-old offensive tackle who's starting to miss time and has a bad back, Kenny Moore, who's a nickel corner, and Xavier McKinney, who's another safety.
All this to say that we think Johnson and Snead should be tagged if long-term deals can't be done. Okay.
Yes.
Safety, 17.12 is the dollar amount here. Your candidates, Antoine Winfield Jr., Kyle Duggar, Cam Curl, Xavier McKinney.
Why'd you say Cam Curl?
Because I knew that it would elicit a response like that from you.
There you go. You got me.
You've had a heck of a relationship with Cam Curl. Here comes the Commanders fans. They're going to take command on the YouTube comments and yell at you if they made it to 37 minutes into this podcast.
They probably did not, which is why Ross tells us to not go 37 minutes.
Yeah, they didn't. Nobody's here. Nobody. That's just you and I, Kyle.
Winfield Jr. is the best player of the safeties available, but 17 feels very ambitious.
I'd agree. I think he's awesome, man. Like, there's not a world. This is what I'll say if I'm Tampa Bay. There's not a world where Antoine Winfield Jr. is playing football for another team. He's the most important. Like, we talk Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, Levante David. Is Devin White a free agent? I don't even think he doesn't matter, but the most important player for them to have back is Antoine Winfield Jr.
Correct. There you go.
Whatever it takes.
Tag him if you need to.
Right.
Wouldn't love it, but tag him if you need to. That is going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. I will be in Indianapolis starting later today. And looking forward to some NFL Combine coverage for you guys this week. So come on back and see us. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. We're out of here. Peace.